Greetings and salutations, fellow Skywatchers from all corners of the globe, no matter where you're listening from. Welcome to Skywatchers Radio. As always, I am one part of the dynamic duo, Angel, and with me as always is Alan. Say hi to the crowd, Alan.
Hi, crowd!
Now we're broadcasting live from New Logic Entertainment Studios, live on the Dark Matter Radio Network and, of course, PSN Radio. And we are joined from the very beginning of this show. I want to just have them on because we have a lot to talk about. We're going to be joined with somebody who I've been getting bombarded with emails asking where he's been, Mr. Alejandro Rojas from Open Minds. Alejandro, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us during the first hour here, sir.
Hello, it is my absolute pleasure to be back, my friend.
Let me tell you something. Never has this happened before on any of my radio programming that a person cannot be on one week, and I literally get bombarded with people asking me, what the heck did you do? Why wasn't he on?
Yep.
I was blamed for it. And something really cool was going on last week. I understand you were at some MUFON stuff. There was a shooting, and I'm not talking about with guns. Tell us what happened here with MUFON. There's what was this? Some kind of a training video exercise? What's going on?
Oh, yeah, and this actually made a pretty big story. We haven't even posted our story on it. We posted kind of a smaller story, and it's gotten big. But, MUFON last week did a boot camp for their field investigators, and it was a week long in the Arizona desert to go out there. Part of it was in the classroom. The other part was out in the desert doing some testing and stuff like that. So, yeah, we did. We went out there to film. We got some great interviews, but we were only able to do the classroom part because the other part was just a little too far away for us. And but we got some pictures, and they sent Roger Marsh some pictures because apparently they had created this silver kind of fake. It looks like a giant colander, silver kind of chrome-plated colander upside down in the desert. Is that the
colander thing that the guy from Ghostbusters wears on his head?
I'm not familiar with that colander thing, but
don't you remember that Rick Moranis wears the colander around his head, and he's like, "Are you the?"
Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember that part. That was pretty funny. But no, it is very different. This would have to be a very big person to wear this one. But I guess they had this thing out there. It was their fake UFO, and according to them, this plane flew over, and then some F-16 jet fighters flew over, they think, checking it out. But Luke Air Force Base isn't too far away, so they could have been doing some training, and they may have checked it out because they thought it was a crashed airplane or something. But make for kind of a cute story that has gotten really big. But we got some really cool interviews with these guys because, for instance, the guy's house it was at, Chuck Modlin, who is kind of in charge of the tech for MUFON, he's got this crazy background of working in defense and working on like aircraft carriers and all of this cool stuff. But he gave us some really cool quotes about UFOs and investigating UFOs and the importance of the technology and everything, and really cool stuff. So we're excited to post a video. We'll do that in a couple of weeks. We just got the pictures from the guys. But, that's what we were up to last Tuesday.
Right. See, people, it was something important. Sounds fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that's what, you're right. It is something that's fun, I think, because people wouldn't know about it.
Right.
And so it was great that we were able to get out there and tell people about it, because we want to do that as much as possible, is tell people about all this cool stuff that's going on in this field,
Yeah, no kidding. We missed you last week, man. We had Travis on, and oh my goodness, it was
what
so
a
cool.
Fun show that was. Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I love having this dude on. I mean, he's one of the best guests to have on the show, and it's such a nice guy to talk to. Really missed you. He says hi, by the way.
Yeah, we're really excited because on the 5th of November, we're going to go out there to film this. Skywatch at the place where that all took place.
Where it actually happened, yeah.
Yeah, so if we get taken or if he gets taken, and it's funny because I interviewed him, and the last thing I said is, we're going to be out there, so if you get taken, we're going to film it. And he had to pause. Like, he was like, oh, he's like, I wouldn't like that.
He would not be a happy camper. He wouldn't be happy with round 2.
Yeah.
Has he been back in the area much? Because I know he doesn't like going to that area much. He doesn't go there much.
I wrote a story about it last week, just specifically on that aspect. And you're right. He doesn't go back there much. It took him a long time to go back there. He's only been back there once in the night, and that was for a filming for a Discovery Channel thing. So it was with a lot of people. So this will be really the second time. Well, it'll be with another group of people, but doing a Skywatch. So he gets worried about being out there. He gets kind of freaked out.
Do you blame him?
Yeah, I know.
Why put yourself out there, though, if you're going to be worried about it? I mean, it's kind of like inviting them to come back and take them.
Well, I think I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say all these TV shows, and everybody's probably begging him to take him out there. And so eventually I think he broke down, and he's done it. And so it probably made him a little more used to going out there.
I think we should have some real fun and actually have him go out there Bigfoot hunting. Just cross-pollinate. That's it. Just cross-pollinate the whole entire event.
Well, I know there's some guys in Arizona because he's kind of our little Arizona contingency. Because he's out here. Luckily, I get to see him. We went camping a few weeks ago. And there is this group of Bigfoot hunters that kind of join us sometimes in these excursions. So
is that Bobo?
They were with us just a few weeks ago.
I hope that's not Bobo.
It's not Bobo.
Bobo from the show.
Yeah, no, it's these other guys. They're specialized in the Mogollon Rim and the Mogollon Monster. They call the Bigfoot out in that area. But to be honest, I forget what they call themselves.
All I could say is great googly moogly.
Yeah. Everybody, in paranormal field, all the groups have their own names and acronyms and stuff. And
indubitably. Speaking of great guests, tonight, by the way, before we continue with the news here, Alejandro, we're going to have an amazing set of guests after this segment. We have Dan Martin, who's going to join us at the end of this hour, and we're going to talk about some stuff that he's promoting. Dan Martin's a really cool author. He has a book about how to survive the global apocalypse. Or
which
any kind
one?
Of apocalypse.
The financial one, the zombie one, the Ebola one, or the alien one?
The one DC Comics is going through after Marvel announced their cinematic Phase 3.
Oh,
but anyway,
good God, yes.
You like that dig, huh? All right.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk to Dan about some really cool stuff later, but in this second hour, and I got to mention this, Alejandro, because he actually said to tell you hi. So, and I know he's listening.
Hello.
We're going to have none other than Mr. Michael Heiser on the show. Let me rephrase that. Dr. Michael Heiser. He didn't go to school for a long time to be just called Mr. He's a doctor. Dr. Michael Heiser. And look, people who've listened to Art Bell over the years should not be a stranger to this man at all. Fascinating person. I've been a fan of what he's done for many, a couple of years now, at least 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6, not longer, because guess what? He was on with Art Bell many years ago.
I claim him as the master debunker.
Let's put it this way. This man turned me into a Zecharia Sitchin hater. Completely. And I used to be like the biggest fanboy for Zecharia Sitchin, Planet X, all that stuff. Loved his work, and then I saw Michael Heiser completely take him apart, and I was like, I was done. Just completely.
I'm surprised you're brave enough to say that, because people don't like to hear bad stuff about Sitchin, but
it's true. It's true. It's especially in the ufology community, he's very, very highly regarded, and people love his work. And like Eric Van Daniken and the ancient alien stuff. Look, I believe that we've been visited, Alejandro. I believe aliens have come down. I believe that there is alien life out there. And there's a story we're going to get to in a little bit, but with Brian Cox, a scientist, who completely is dumbfounding me with a statement, and then there's a clarification on this statement that Alejandro's going to talk about also. But before we get into that, it dumbfounds me whenever I hear anybody say that there is no existence of life out there. No, I believe that there's life out there, but I also believe that people lie. And I love what Michael Heiser has done, what Chris White did with his video, Ancient Aliens Debunked. Completely just put it out there. Look, whether you believe this stuff or not, go and do your own homework. That's what I did. I saw the videos, and I went and I started doing a little of my own research, and Michael Heiser was on point. I mean, on everything.
Well, everything's true on the internet if you look hard enough.
That is true, too. But see, I did a little bit of old school research. I didn't just look up Wikipedia.
Sure you did.
I didn't just look up Wikipedia. Yeah, Wikipedia. That's what I did. probably. But guess what? We're also joined by Eugene, who's joining us on the call here. And Eugene is sitting back, and I know he's eager to talk to Michael Heiser also. Isn't that right, Eugene?
Oh, I cannot wait. I was screaming right then when I was muted, too, about the Planet X stuff. But
I know you're a big... You're a big... but you're a Planet X fan, aren't you?
I am, but it's not so much as Sitchin. I mean, more Bob Fletcher lately has really gotten me back into it. I mean, I don't know if any of you have heard his Late Night in the Midlands or Coast to Coast interviews in the past month or so, but I don't know. He completely turned me back around. Like I said, I'm not too much into Sitchin, but I'm waiting to see what Heiser says before I make up my mind. Completely.
Well, I'll put it this way. This is one of the things that really got me interested in researching what Heiser was talking about years ago when he was on Art Bell and when he literally publicly challenged Zecharia to debate him. And Zecharia knew about this challenge, and he never, ever accepted it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't defend Sitchin. I mean, I'm not in any position to, but I mean, there's no points I can throw out to win the debate, especially with somebody like Heiser. So, I mean, as far as he goes, Heiser's going to win that debate every time. But as far as what I take issue with Heiser is he makes comments like that. Every UFO sighting can be boiled down to either technology we have or the breakaway civilizations that Dolan talks about, what tech they have. So it's a little murky for me.
Well, yeah, but we just don't know. That's the whole point. We don't know what the answers are.
Not knowing doesn't mean...
It's all speculation right now.
Right. And I think even Mr. or Dr. Heiser would agree that it's really all speculation. It's all theories because nothing can be really proven. But moving on, we're going to have him on in the second hour. He's the main event for tonight, and I'm so excited to have him on. I've been this is literally a show a couple of years in the making, guys, because I'm a big fan of what he's done. And this is a rarity, by the way, and Alejandro, you're going to laugh. This is a rarity because, as you know, Dr. Heiser, he's a religious man. He's a biblical scholar. I'm an atheist. So, and this is I think this is one of the first times on radio where you're going to have an atheist and a biblical scholar who agree almost 100% on something. Crazy, huh?
Entertaining is more like it.
Just a little
wild
nutty
stuff.
But moving on with more news, Alejandro, what's going on with Open Minds? I know there's Area 51 deathbed confession by a gentleman by the name of Boyd Bushman. Can we talk about him for a minute? Because this caught my attention, and this is an interesting story. And I've always said that the deathbed confessions would be a great way for disclosure to happen because these guys have nothing really to hide anymore. They're dying.
Mm-hmm.
But this one's a little hokey, isn't it? I mean, there's holes being poked on this one already.
Well, in many ways, there are holes. And I've been following this story for a long time. And in fact, we kind of have a bit of an exclusive in our story that we posted on this today. In that, Boyd Bushman was really an engineer. He was a senior scientist for Lockheed Martin. Many years ago, I first saw him on a documentary in 1999 called The $1 Billion Secret that Nick Cook, a guy who writes for Jane's Defense, the famous defense magazine, did for Discovery Channel. And he interviewed a bunch of people looking into black projects. He also then, towards the end, wanted to talk about anti-gravity, and he said pretty much all the companies said they're not working on anti-gravity, but he got an interview with one senior scientist for Lockheed who would talk about it, and that was Boyd Bushman.
Right.
Boyd Bushman was really vague. You know, he was making these weird statements, and Nick Cook was like, I feel like he wants to tell me something, because Nick Cook is English, and that's supposed to be an
great
English
accent
I'm doing right there, yeah. I feel he wants to tell me something, but he can't. So then Boyd Bushman started getting into his ideas about how Lockheed isn't doing that research, but he is, and he thinks there's something to it, and he believes in the Hutchinson effect, which is this scientist in Canada who does kind of these sound waves frequencies that he sends at stuff, and it supposedly makes things levitate. So they talked about that. Interesting enough. Okay. So then in 2007, he's on From Here to Andromeda, which is kind of a documentary. I call it kind of obscure because have you guys even heard of it? It was done by David Sarita.
No, but I definitely know who he is.
Yeah, it was really long. Not a lot of people kind of sit through the whole thing, but in it he. How long
are we talking about here? Like 3 hours, 4 hours?
3 hours. But
long,
it's kind of slow, you know. So in it, and it's a little nebulous about what the focus of the whole thing is. But he does these longer interviews with Boyd Bushman, who kind of talks about how their black projects are probably what people were seeing as UFOs. He kind of alludes to Bob Lazar in Area 51, and says, "I gave you the Bob Lazar tape, so that should tell you something." And then finally, at the very end of the interview, he talks about how supposedly he had a friend who was a jet fighter pilot who shot down the Roswell UFO and then went and walked in the UFO and saw the aliens. So he threw a little bone right out there on that. Of course, he talked about Bob Lazar's videos, but Bob Lazar had a lot of videos out by 2007. All of his stuff's posted on YouTube, so not that big of a deal there. And I have big news concerning Bob Lazar too, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is good stuff.
Interview time.
We'll get to that in a second, but continue.
But so now this new video comes out. They're calling it a deathbed confession, but it's not really a deathbed confession. But it is the latest interview with him, and it was done. They don't say when it was done, but before he died, which was August 7th. So he only passed away recently. But in this one, he's way out there. He's talking about how he's talked to his team at Area 51, and his team, gave him some information. And actually, I kind of skipped the exclusive part that I had, because in 2008, I was talking to a UFO researcher, and she said she was friends with Boyd Bushman, and she had a polygraph test that Boyd Bushman had taken where he admits to working at Area 51, having met aliens and handled alien material. He says he worked at S4 and he met Bob Lazar in this alleged polygraph test. So she forwarded me the email. So I told her, well, I would like to post it, but I'm going to ask, Boyd Bushman first. She said, go for it. I emailed Boyd Bushman because she forwarded his email, so I had it there. And I said, I'd love to interview you and to talk about this polygraph test. And all he replied was with 3 letters. Or 3 or 4 letters. It essentially said, when and for how much compensation. And in fact, I think it just said, when and compensation, ?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I replied and I said, well, I was just going to, hopefully videotape this and put it on YouTube for free, but if you need money, let me know what you need. Didn't hear anything back. I figured, well, at least hopefully he could verify the polygraph is real. He didn't respond to that email. I guess my only guess is maybe he was thinking I'd come back and say, well, of course, we want to pay you $15,000 or something, but I didn't, so he dropped it. I don't know what the deal was, but anyway, I didn't hear anything back, nor did I post the polygraph because I didn't have permission. I sent it to a few researcher buddies, and to their credit, they never posted it either. They kept it confidential like I asked them to, so that was really cool. But anyway, now, this latest video where he says he wasn't at Area 51, so his story kind of changes this whole time. But there was a team that was. They sent him these pictures of these close-up UFOs, and the pictures are not that great. Nope. They say, okay, we also send you this team gave him pictures of an alien, and we'll get to that in a sec. The team also says his friend was with an alien who died, and his friend sent him a picture of himself where there's an alien ghost in the picture. He sent a picture. Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We posted that. He sent a picture that was supposed to be their planet, which is this little white dot kind of out of focus thing that is supposed to be their planet. A lot of crazy claims. So pretty wild stuff. The photos.
This is reminding me a lot of Billy Myers, by the way.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, the story changing and excuses for everything. Kind of like this guy, Dick French, that we interviewed, too, who kind of an older guy with lots of crazy claims, but his stories never panned out. It turns out these photos he was showing were actually debunked years ago because the person who received and posted these photos first was John Hutchinson. the Canadian guy that he followed, who did the anti-gravity work. John Hutchinson posted these pictures in 2008, said he received them anonymously from a supposed CIA informant, and he felt that they might be real. Well, when those were posted, many people noticed that it's a doll, an alien doll from Kmart. So they responded with their pictures. Now that this story has come out of Boyd Bushman and you know, everybody is highlighting, of course, these alien pictures, there's a lot of people coming out of the woodwork and taking pictures of their alien doll and posting it online. Yeah. And if you see, you know, it really looks exactly like this doll.
Identical. I've seen some pictures of this.
Yeah.
You know, I see some pictures of people are like pointing out, well, look, the eyes on this one are squinted. Yeah. Look how real this one looks.
So this one has a little bit more mascara than that.
Yeah. So what people are out there saying, and it's kind of frightening how many people believe this, and some of the listeners right now will probably say they believe it. So what the theory is, a lot of these people have, is that the government made the doll and had Kmart sell it so that if pictures of the alien ever got out, they could say, no, it's not an alien, it's a Kmart doll. How's that?
Now, if you saw the Kmart doll moving and there were no puppet strings, then we'd have something to talk about.
And it's surprising. You're going to get this response to your show. Every time I post a story or every single post of this story, I see there's somebody suggesting that idea, even way back when with the John Hutchinson stuff. So that's another problem. He said he got it from his team at Area 51, but he actually probably got them from John Hutchinson, who posted them years ago.
Or from Kmart directly.
There's a lot of holes in the story.
Probably, yeah. I'm going with that one on this one.
Here's the big Bob Lazar story. So he claimed in the polygraph thing that he worked with Bob Lazar at S4. Bob Lazar is notorious for being very hard to get a hold of. The only person he really talks to in this field is George Knapp, because he talks about he doesn't like being part of the UFO field. Well, George Knapp is a good buddy of mine, and we've been talking to him and saying, you know, in these last videos for the anniversary where Lazar did some interviews that George Knapp posted, he has an important message to get out there. And we would love for him to come to the UFO Congress and tell that message. And George Knapp said, well, you know, if anybody's going to do it, I would trust you guys because we've got a long history with George. And so it's going to happen. Bob Lazar has agreed to come to the UFO Congress in 2015.
Wow.
George Knapp is going to do an hour or so about Lazar, and I've seen him do this. He did a similar thing at MUFON, the MUFON Symposium. If you're a skeptic to Bob Lazar's story, once you listen to George Knapp, you're going to be scratching your head and saying, well, what the hell's going on here? So, and then they're going to do a Q&A, and they're going to sit down, and George is going to pick some questions that we'll be gathering over the next few months and at the conference, and George will ask.
Hang on, that's not fair. He's going to choose which questions to answer, not take and field answers directly from the audience?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not. No. I'm sorry. No. He can't pick and choose.
Live calls on this show? You do?
Yes, we do.
Of course we do.
Absolutely.
Many times you got to admit you regret it.
Hasn't that really happened yet?
No, not yet. No, we've
only
had good callers.
Squatch once in a while.
Yeah, we've had good callers for the most part.
Which is good. Do you screen?
Nope. Unscreened calls, man.
Nope.
I don't know how you do this, but that's great. Every time I'm on Coast to Coast.
Because we have intelligent, non-sarcastic listeners.
Yeah, you do.
Why.
Yes.
But even at our conference, I would say a quarter of the questions, and I'm sorry for the people who attend the conference, you're probably not the people I'm talking about anyway, because it's the same jokers who run to the microphone every time, and never do they want to ask a question. They want to make a statement that often has nothing to do with what the speaker just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've noticed that. Yeah.
For these reasons, it's really frustrating, and we really want to get to the root of things. However, I am good friends with George Knapp, and we've talked about this. And George does not shy away from the hard questions. George is a journalist. He understands that you can't do that to be legitimate, because he's a journalist. If he's going to ask questions in an interview, he's going to ask the hard questions. If
Right.
you listen to him on Coast to Coast, he always goes for the hard questions. So he will be asking the hard ones. So that's a good thing that, it's not just going to be that kind of this silly little Pollyanna.
Yeah, it's not cookie cutter. He doesn't.
What's your favorite color?
Right. So when you were on Area 51, what color was the phone you used? He's an ass. That's one thing about George Knapp, and I've actually interacted with him a little bit in email and tried to get him on the show here. He really is a legit dude when it comes to that. That he is. Mm-hmm. That he is.
He's an awesome dude. He would do it if he had time, but I mean, if you know what, your news reporters are busy 24/7. You never get really time off when you're a news reporter. On top of that, he's doing Coast to Coast and stuff. He's a extremely busy person.
I say they have a screener at the event, just not a screener, but an MC saying, "Sir, you have a question. What's your question? Okay, let me repeat it for the audience."
Yeah, well, it just doesn't work. You can't screen at a conference. The only way you can screen is have people write down their question and bring it around, because you can't waste people's time. Okay, ask your question. Well, sorry, we don't like your question. Can you go sit down?
I mean, what's he afraid of at this point, honestly?
Well, but it's not being afraid of something. It's getting good questions.
You're just afraid someone's going to go on a rant for no apparent reason.
Well, it happens all the time. If you go
That's
watch, if you go to these conferences, like I do a lot of them, that's what happens. You get most of the questions, and then they're asking about their favorite thing. So in other words, they're going out there and saying, well, have you heard of Billy Meyer? He did something really interesting, and he talked about the prophecy of ISIS and blah, 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 blah. And, we'll go on for a few minutes. What do you think of that? And, often speakers in those cases have to say, I don't know much about that, but thank you. Or,
Next question.
It's off topic, and it's not, I know George Knapp. He'll get to the questions that everybody wants to know.
Then I would honestly say let George Knapp.
The education thing. Everybody's going to want to know about some of these things that are some of the harder questions.
I say George Knapp should actually acquire all the questions and put them in order, but don't let Lazar see them till he's actually on the stage. I want to hear.
Lazar's not going to see them.
Oh, okay. We're sure of that.
Well, that's not what Knapp and I have discussed. We've talked about not having that be the case. But, and Knapp says, there's not a problem because Lazar is willing to talk about whatever. And like I said, he wants to – it's kind of a once and for all clearing the air on some of these tougher questions.
Okay.
Interesting. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the video on its inside.
Oh my goodness, I'm saving money now to try to be there.
You can't be there. Why not, Seth? You were going to say because you can't be there.
Oh, it's when November what?
It's February.
February. What day in February? Because I actually
to the 21st.
Funny as it is, I actually have my calendar on my computer.
Yeah, good.
I am going to tell you.
I'm marking it down, and I'm saving money now. I am.
Because
February what?
18th to the 21st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's what I got. I have the Miami International Boat Show and Yacht and Brokerage Show.
Well, it is early enough where you've got plenty of time to reschedule.
There you go.
I can it's hard to reschedule 220,000 people going to a 27th annual boat show.
Is this something you're running?
You can work around it.
I have more than one exhibitor space there.
Oh, son of a... Hire some little cutie that you can that will be so appreciative she'll want to go on a date with you later that can run it for you.
There you go.
I would love to hire.
She's going to pocket half of the money, but
I would love to hire Booth Bait to work that show. My problem is just that show alone. I'm probably going to do just me and one other person working the booth. We're probably going to do about $60,000 to $70,000 in sales.
Oh,
and that's a hard thing for me to turn down.
Okay, I got to break in right now because we actually got to hit commercial break. And before, Alejandro, I want you to stick around. Can you stick around for the rest of the hour here? We
sure.
have
let's do it.
we have a guest coming up now on the other side of the break. Dan Martin is going to be with us, and we're going to promote something really cool. Dan Martin is promoting a Kickstarter account, and it's for free food factories, for organic free food factories. This is really, really cool and neat, so I want everybody to please pay attention to what he's going to bring on here for the next 20 minutes. This is something that I think could definitely benefit a lot of the listeners. So stick around. We're going to go to commercial break here on Skywatchers Radio. We'll be right back with Dan Martin on the other side of the break. Open lines if you guys want to call in. If you have any questions for Alejandro, myself, or for Alan over here, or for Dan, do so.
I'll let Alejandro try and convince me to get to the convention while on break, and hopefully we'll have a real answer after the break, folks. Keep you in suspense.
Welcome back to Skywatchers Radio, live again on the Dark Matter Radio Network and PSN Radio. With us on this second segment of the first hour, we have none other than a good friend, Dan Martin, who's been on the show with us before to talk about the apocalypse. Well, now he's on to a different project, and a really, really cool project. Dan, welcome to the show, and tell the folks about this free organic food factory that you're working on.
All right, Jackal. Thanks for having me, first off. As we went over before, let me just run over just quickly for the listeners that don't remember or haven't heard. A little bit brief background about myself. I was an engineer for Boeing Aerospace. My wife was an engineer for AT&T. Both very lucrative careers. Sick of corporate America, consumerism, capitalism. Cashed in all our investments. Sold 2 waterfront homes in 2 different countries. Cars, jet skis, boats. Burned the cell phones, TVs, computers, and left society. 6 years, we lived 100% off the grid, self-sufficient. We didn't leave our homestead once. We didn't see or communicate with even one other person the entire time. No news, no TV. We made our own home, our own food. We grew our own food. Made our own solar panels and wind turbines, gray water systems, rate catchment systems, so on and so forth. So what we got going on now is... well, let me just kind of run you through a little example, a little daydream here. Imagine this. Imagine you walk into a restaurant for a nice, relaxing meal. You sit down at the table, grab your menus, and in nice, bright red letters, the letters F-R-E-E appear next to each succulent dish.
That's my favorite word in the dictionary, by the way.
Succulent.
If it's free,
dish?
It's from me.
No, free. Second, that's my second favorite word.
You know what the greatest nation in the world is, folks, right?
Freedom Nation?
No, donation.
Oh, well, that's it. Continue.
So, just free. Every meal, every dish is free. No catches, no hidden fees, no donations, no cash registers. Okay, here's another example. You walk into a local organic grocery store, and guess what? All the produce, all the seafood is completely free. You fill your cart with a little bit of this, some of that. Your total adds up to $0.00. And again,
well,
no
as a big guy, I must say this is something like Nirvana to me.
Well,
I like where this is going.
And I get, how could you possibly do this? You have expenses, you have profit, markup.
Right. How is this possible?
Right. And it goes back to exactly what we did. We had a large, after cashing everything, we had a large startup bankroll to purchase everything we needed to become 100% self-sufficient. Like I said, we produced our own electricity. We had natural and passive heating and air conditioning. We lived in a non-habitable free trade zone. We didn't pay taxes. Don't work, so there's no income taxes. We built everything ourselves, so there's no construction fees, no insurance, no expenses, no cell phones. We made our own fuel, no cost of gas, no mortgage. Once you eliminate all the expenses, there's no need to make any profit. You follow me?
I follow you.
Now, if we can do this on a larger scale...
Don't know if I can do this, but I follow you. Go ahead.
Which we are doing. We're doing it right now, actually. Feeding a small community of about 2,000 people in a little village called San Pancho, outside of Puerto Vallarta. And we're growing all of our own food with aquaponics, hydroponics. And we're seeing about 2 times the production rate, 2 times the size of produce, 2 times the nutrient and sugar content, and roughly about 4 times the quantity due to an indoor year-round growing cycle. And that's with 99% less effort, 99% less cost, 99% less water, and almost 99% less loss when we compare it to current annual industrial food production yield rates in the same zone. And then we don't have
hang on, I got to ask a question.
Sure.
You're telling me indoor it's 99% more efficient than outdoor using the natural sun's rays with the cost of electricity. LEDs do consume power because that's actually something I'm more than familiar with.
Mm-hmm. And we get all of our power 100% free.
You get all your power 100% free.
Solar power and wind turbines, 100% free.
Can generate enough power to provide enough LED lights for...
And move the water pumps.
Okay.
We're producing about 6 tons of produce and seafood a month.
I understand
to feed about 2,000 people.
Okay, so my question then would be the enormous amount of money you need to construct the facility to house the lighting, the pumps, and the plants in would be your exorbitant cost.
We're looking at about $100,000 in startup costs, and we have
for how many square foot of a facility?
We're looking at building a. Let's see, I'll tell you right here.
Sorry, I'm a number country.
60,000 square foot facility
for $100,000.
Yep, that's with 700 hydroponic bays, 3 400,000 gallon fish farms, and 100 hydroponic fed fruit and nut trees.
For $100,000.
For $100,000, you're talking about just a factory, just a shell, just a warehouse. We don't have all the amenities of sheetrock and plugs and nice lighting and flooring.
No. I'm just thinking about the cost of the frame for a 60,000 square foot facility. Just the metal enclosure.
Just the steel. Just the steel and the labor for welding and construction is about $30,000
for 60,000 square feet. Wow.
Yes. The land
who are you robbing? How are you getting someone to commit to that price? That just sounds amazingly.
It does, doesn't it?
Cost effective.
That's the current rate of steel right now per pound.
Okay, so you're factoring that in as the cost of steel right now, not even pressed or being formed into the sheets that need to be used to manufacture. Oh.
No, the cost of steel is sold by the pound. It's already whatever form you buy it in, I-beam, C-purlins, C-channel. It's just per pound. It's not. You don't pay extra for the shape you want it in.
Okay, I'm just still dropping my jaw at 60,000 square feet for that price with everything enclosed inside it already. That's just wow.
What do you mean everything enclosed inside of it?
Well, you're saying the whole entire facility is costing you $100,000.
The structure alone is $60,000. The what we're going to have to pay to have the hydroponics set up, the bay set up, is about another $20,000. But we are pretty much moving our whole facility from Puerto Vallarta up. So we're just going to pay transportation costs on that. The land was donated. We have all the stock ready to go, all the plants, all the trees, all the produce.
Okay, so you have the existing raw materials to make this all come together. But so the actual startup cost is not $100,000.
No, it's only going to be 62 or 67. I don't want to. It's either 62 or 67.
But you're not counting in all the assets that are coming along with you to put it together. True.
You mean what it's going to be worth?
No. Well, you're bringing plants. There's a value to that. The LEDs that you're installing, there's a value to that. Even if it's something that was purchased prior, it still goes into the cost of putting this thing together. You can't tell me this whole facility is costing just $100,000.
The structure alone is costing $67,000. That's it.
Right,
we have the land donated to us. We have an angel investor out of Houston that's going to pay for all the pumps and lighting.
Okay. Now I'm seeing the bigger picture here.
I'm just talking about structure alone. Well, the crowdfunding is only for the structure alone. and what we need to pay for permits for construction and the labor.
All right, but everything else is coming along with. There's, there's other external investments. In other words,
that's already paid for. The Kickstarter campaign is.
Tell us about the Kickstarter, because we're almost short on time here. So let's talk about the Kickstarter.
I'm sorry I went on a stretch on this. I'm just trying to understand.
We're going to get the same questions from the contributors, so I'm glad you're covering it. And,
I'm trying to be one. I might be one of the contributors. I'm in a generous mood today.
We really don't need contributors as much as we just need getting the word out there. Contributors can come later. We just need to get the word out there. We need to get everybody looking at this as much as possible. The place to go to is www.freefoodfactory.com. It'll take you straight to the Kickstarter. And we're already over $1,000 in the first 3 days with almost 50 backers. And still got
50 days to go. You got a lot to go. 50 days.
Right. We haven't even started yet. So all the information is there. A great video that they put together explains everything that I just kind of crash coursed in, and some footage of our existing site. We have hydroponically grown papaya trees that are 2 months old that are already producing fruit. And you're talking 2 years on any other kind of tree before it even starts to produce fruit. And that's how we get these massive quantities of reproduction and
sounds exciting.
And half the time because the tree doesn't have to grow these huge root systems to look for water. It doesn't have to grow these huge root systems to protect itself from the wind and cold, and it develops all of its time and is straight producing fruit. And you give it optimal conditions, optimal lighting, optimal temperatures, optimal food, and it's going to just straight grow fruit really quick and really big and really fast. No chemicals, no pesticides, no GMO. It's completely healthy, organic food. The only food that it's eating, the plants are eating, is the waste from the fish, and then that water is recycled, reoxygenated, and brought back to the fish clean. So it's a closed loop permaculture system, and we're ready to go. It's not a theory, it's not a dream. It's already in work. It's been in work for 8 years now, and we're just upscaling. That's it.
Very cool. And again, tell everybody again how they can find the Kickstarter page.
Freefoodfactory.com, or go to Facebook and find us at Facebook/FreeFoodFactory. And we just need to get the word out. We're not asking for contributions. Again, if you have to contribute, I'm not going to stop you, but really...
Well, you kind of are by asking for pledges on Kickstarter, but that's neither here nor there. Let me ask you, are you concerned with the Kickstarter thing? Because Kickstarter, if you don't meet the pledge goal, you don't get a single dollar. Have you thought about crowdfunding or some of these other sites like Indiegogo or any of these other websites like Kickstarter?
We looked at the other ones. They looked at the other ones, but they decided on Kickstarter just because it has a higher success rate. It's a little bit over 50% of the pledge of the projects to go and get funded. So we went with them. If we don't, we'll just try another method. And if it doesn't come to the United States, it won't come to the States. We got another place going up in I want to say Africa or Egypt.
They need food. They need food in Africa. Oh man!
The angel investor that's out of Houston is from Africa or Egypt. I don't remember which one offhand. But one of the conditions that he's donating the pumps and materials is if we can duplicate it for him in Africa or Egypt. So that's the next site. We'd like to do Detroit, where all these factories and warehouses are already abandoned. They're trying to give them away. Then we don't even need the $67,000. We just recycle a whole building. Repurpose a building.
That's an excellent idea, actually. That's a great idea.
It's not a bad idea. I was actually in Detroit recently.
And you put the people back to work in Detroit, too, because you'll hire from within.
Absolutely, but how do you pay them if you're giving the food away for free?
All of our staff is volunteers. 100%.
Oh, wow. In other words, no money going back to Detroit.
That might pose problems in Detroit.
Just food.
Dan, I hope this meets the goal, man. I hope wish you well on this. It sounds interesting. Again, this is something I think we all could benefit from, and I love free food, so I'm with you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on the show. And again, everybody, check out the Kickstarter account and make sure you pledge. Even $1 helps, right, Dan?
All right. Oh, the thing is, even if you just pledge $1 and make sure you comment, it boosts us up in the visibility of the search engines. Just the $1 pledge. It doesn't matter the quantity or the quality. Sorry, it's the quantity. The more pledges you have with the comments, the more visible the campaign is. So yeah, just $1 will help.
Exactly. Dan, thanks for being on the show, buddy.
Thanks a lot, partner. Appreciate it.
Talk to you soon. That gentleman right there is Dan Martin, everybody. Great guy. And that's a great cause, man. It really is, guys. I think
No, it sounds interesting.
The idea is really, really, really cool. So much luck to Dan. Everybody check that Kickstarter account out. Now, we do have a caller on the line who's been very patient with us, and he wants to ask a question, so we're going to let him do that. Caller, 717. You're live on Skywatchers Radio. Now you can ask your question.
Thank you. My name's Lou.
Yes,
Good evening. I have two questions in a sense for Alejandro. The most specific one is, I read online that he accepted a challenge from Stan Friedman about the MJ12 documents and debating about them. I was curious if that's been arranged, if that's really going to come off. And the second question is, or really for all of you, is when are we going to hear Ray Fowler interviewed? So I'll keep listening, but go ahead. I won't interrupt.
Interesting question. Alejandro?
The second one first, Ray Fowler, because I think that's great you bring him up because he's kind of an unsung hero in all of this. I mean, he did a lot of the greatest cases and some of the best books. In fact, the Allagash abductions is one that he did, and we're going to have these guys at our conference that were part of this. And this case is as good as Travis Walton. One of the great things about Walton is he's so credible himself. You meet him, and he's a regular, down-to-earth guy. These guys are just like that. So I agree with you. He is right now, the last thing I read about him, he's doing some classes, like free university type classes on UFOs and on life after death, or at least our near-death experiences, which I guess is another passion of his. But nobody I know of has been able to get a hold of him, and from what I understand, he's not really wanting to engage in the UFO field and stuff like that. He's more interested in his death, his other topics. So, yeah, I agree with you. I've been trying to get a hold of him, and I think he'd be great to talk to. But if you can get a hold of him or convince him, I think either of us would love to have him on. He's great. Okay.
I'll probably take time and make an effort. So,
indeed.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. And you're right. You have listeners that do ask good questions. But
we have great listeners on Skywatchers Radio.
Surprise!
Yeah,
it is surprising. No, just kidding.
Best network ever.
Stanton Friedman. We've been going back on email and everything, and it's really frustrating to me because one of the things he hates now, and I should preface this with that me and Stanton are really good friends, and we, even though we debate, I think more so than with other people he debates, we get along very well. But one of the things that frustrates me is he gets really upset when people don't read his stuff and then want to debate him on it. And that's frustrating me right now because and this is my problem, and it's really been one of my problems with his whole study of MJ12, is he completely ignores how those files came to the public eye and the whole disinformation scandal that took place. He keeps trying to argue with me that there was no disinformation scandal. There certainly was. I am not using verbiage here that is, overblowing, overstating the whole what happened. These people, one of them being an Air Force employee, did say he was he was engaged in conducting a disinformation program. Then this UFO researcher who, and this is an important part, after Stanton did all of his research, the majority of his research, I should say, into MJ12, he got a grant for like $16,000 to research it. After he did this research, and that's when he found out that his research partner was working with the government disinformation guy. This is a big deal, and Stanton has to talk about this. I've gotten him to answer a few questions. Actually, Paul Kimball, who's his cousin, interviewed
nephew.
on this stuff.
Nephew.
Or, you're right. I'm sorry. Nephew did a great interview. He just recently posted on this stuff because Stanton admitted to me in private that Bill Moore is a liar and a cheat, and he didn't trust him, and all of these things that happened during this period of time. This is what Stanton told me. He was, for instance, taking money and not sending stuff to people, and this is why Stanton broke off relations with him. But, and it's in the interview with Paul Kimball, so you'll have to check that out. Because my point is we need to talk about this stuff. This is my research. Just because it's casting doubt on the veracity of the documents, that's a totally different subject. You can argue with Kevin Randall and everything over that. I'm just saying this happened, and how can you try to say that it's not important to the documents? And how can you say then there's no way it's part of this disinformation scandal when the whole term MJ-12 came from Doty, this guy who was working for the Air Force. So I want him to focus on my research. I mean, that's fair. That's what he asked for. And I want to ask him questions about this because he needs to address it. He doesn't want to do that, so we're kind of at an impasse. So it'll probably happen down the road. He's been really busy. We've been conversing online over email, mostly back and forth, although some of these things he has also sent to Frank Warren with UFO Chronicles, who has also posted some of our comments back and forth. So we'll see what happens. But like Kevin Randall says, they've done hundreds of debates, and what does it really get you? Everybody sticks to their own points. Everybody sticks to their own sides. Nobody gets convinced of anything. And really, for me, I'm a journalist. My point and what my goal is to get out facts and information. Right. Not to necessarily to me, my opinion is totally a side subject and almost moot. I mean, I would rather have people take the facts and information and make up their own mind than care about my opinion. It's great that people do care about my opinion. I'm willing to share it. But I always tell people that's only my opinion. I respect everybody's right to an opinion. Form your own opinion. And we always try to be very unbiased when we write our stories at openminds.tv.
I can't certainly stand in for Stanton with information, but I assume one point he would make is that the Menzel appearing in the list of MJ-12 people is probably way beyond Doty's pay grade.
Well, that's not true whatsoever. Okay. And in fact, here's the other problem with that is it's not beyond – this is what I would argue, and I know I kind of – tease Doty, but it's true. It's not beyond Doty's pay grade, but perhaps beyond his mental capacity. And the only reason I say that is when you read the documents that Doty hoaxed, and he's very open about having hoaxed, which included MJ-12, which was the beginning of all of this, they're very poorly written. They're really silly and bombastic. However, the documents later that many suspect were the ones William Moore helped with are much more sophisticated. And this was the period of time when William Moore was working with him. And it's certainly not beyond William Moore. I mean, Mendel was the biggest debunker at the time. So he's a perfect type of person to put on a list like that, because then you could say, just like every debunker these days, everybody says every debunker is a disinformation. How many times do you hear that, Seth Shostak is really a disinformationist, or SETI? We've got a story about that today on our website, SETI being disinformationist. So everybody makes that argument. So that would be perfect if you wrote a document today to say, Seth Shostak is actually now part of MJ-12, and he's just trying to dissuade people and make them look somewhere else when he knows what's really going on. So I don't think that's that really big of a deal personally. Otherwise, one of the damning things has always been that Stanton Friedman writes this in his book, even that him and William Moore already, when he saw the list, he knew that it had to be right except for Menzel, because him and Moore had already come up with that list.
Had they? Except for Menzel or whatever?
Exactly. And I asked him, is that true? He said, of course it's true, because me and Moore, we researched and we made a list of people who were probably involved with the whole UFO thing. And when that came out in the MJ-12 documents, I thought, hey, we were right.
Bingo.
Well, that's awfully coincidental. And Kevin Randall makes the point that after all of this time, we know more about the major players. We know who were the aides, who were the majors and stuff that were involved with some of this stuff, and why hasn't it come out that any of them were involved, or why were they unaware of this whole thing when in reality they would have been? And it's just because they didn't have the information back then. So, and really when it comes down to it, what have we learned from the whole thing except for chase our tails with Doty's lies? What have we gotten from this? No government document talks about MJ-12. We haven't been able to talk
there's
to
one. Remember?
People.
Remember the one onion skin document?
There's a Twining memo. The other one that Stanton coincidentally only believes 3 out of the dozens is real, but the rest are fake. Right. But that is one he believes is real. If you read how Moore says he got that document, it's really silly, this whole cloak and dagger thing. And I've written about it several times. I have this video on it too. But at Open Mindset TV, you can find a video on YouTube, the MJ-12 disinformation scandal. But the other problem with that is that it was Moore and Chandera, Moore who was part of the that found it. And coincidentally, Stanton couldn't be there that weekend to go with them to go look for this document. And they even say the document was not in a place it should be because it had nothing to do with the documents, the other documents in that area. The other problem is that even if it is real, all it does is say a meeting about MJ-12. It doesn't give any reference as to what MJ-12 was. So if Doty was sanctioned to do this disinformation by the government, if Doty, and that's really the crux.
There's a lot of ifs here.
Yeah, but if Doty was sanctioned to do this by the government, which is what many UFO researchers, the UFO researchers who know the details about all of this that happened, that's what the vast majority of them believe. And if that's the case, of course they're going to fool us all. I don't think there's any way we'd be able to tell truth from reality if they actively tried to trick us all. It would be very easy for them to do, and they would have a lot of resources to do it. That would mean Doty was working with probably a team of people to create all of this stuff.
Agreed.
We just can't discount that possibility.
Agreed. I agree. No, guys, I have to cut you off, though. We have to hit commercial break because we have a very, very, very important guest waiting in the wings. Dr. Michael Heiser is waiting for us to get him on the show. Lou, I'm sorry. You're going to have to ask the question next time, my friend. We've taken way too much time. We're over on the break here. Guys, we're going to be right back with our main event guest, Dr. Michael Heiser. Again, this is a show I've been waiting for a long time. This is years in the making. I'm so excited to have him on, so please stick around. We're going to be right back with Dr. Heiser on Skywatchers Radio, right here on the Dark Matter Radio Network. All right, everybody, welcome back to Skywatchers Radio, back from break, and with our main event guest. That's right, the one, the only, a gentleman who has been on my mind for years to have on this show or any other show I've been on, because I'm a huge follower of what he's been able to do for the last decade plus. Dr. Michael Heiser is finally on the air with us. Welcome to Skywatchers Radio, sir. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I know it's a crazy amount of people on the line right now, and a lot of people are listening in. A lot of folks, find you controversial because of your background. First time I heard of you was on Art Bell's show, calling out the famous Zecharia Sitchin, which I talked about earlier on the show, and of course it's very controversial to say anything about Zecharia Sitchin. People really hold on to his beliefs like his religion, but what you did years ago completely inspired me and turned me around on the whole Planet X theory and the Anunnaki and Sitchin's work. That was awe-inspiring to find out that it was all a big hoax and a lie, and the way you did it was just masterful. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how you started going in on Sitchin and how you got interested in talking about what he was working on?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird story because the way I sort of got drawn into all this officially. I mean, I'd always been interested in UFOs and paranormal stuff and things like that. Again, sort of a peripheral kind of lurker. And when I essentially dumped my dissertation for a year, the first year of what should have been my Ph.D. dissertation, and wrote a novel called The Facade. Well, that, long story short, I eventually got on Coast to Coast because of that novel. And I was familiar with Coast because I'd listened to it while I was in grad school the whole time. And there's nothing in the novel specifically about Sitchin, but when I got on that show and some other shows, it kept coming up all the time. And so I thought, well, I need to know who this guy is. I mean, I knew who Von Daniken was and things like that, but so I looked for him, and at first I thought, wow, a kindred spirit. He's talking about ancient languages and all this sort of stuff. And then when I got into his work, it's like, holy cow, this. This is a bad freshman paper, it was
red flags everywhere, wasn't it?
Oh, it was one of those things where I don't even know where to start because I could just see problems everywhere. And so what I did, again, it might have been a little naive, but I created a website, and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but it was the internet was young. And stupid people like me who thought we could actually put up a decent site did so and, either succeeded or failed in whatever area. So I put up this site called sitchiniswrong.com, which still exists. And I went through basically the core items of his mythology. And again, I like to say it this way, I am what Sitchin claimed to be. This is my field. When you go to grad school, you got to take all these languages,
right.
Semitic stuff, and so I could evaluate very narrowly at that point what his language claims were, and sort of things like that. And the site has developed over the years. If you go up there now, you'll see really exciting things like me going to the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature online. I made a screen capture video. You can watch me with the mouse, and I find the site, and I type in, Anunnaki, and I hit the button, and you get all of the occurrences of the term Anunnaki in the cuneiform tablets, and then you hit the little TR for translate. In other words, you can check up on me.
Right.
It's boring video. There's no special effects. There's no CGI.
In fact, you made a comment on one of your videos that this is not the stuff you do if you want to get girls.
Right. And I was married. Before I was doing stuff like that. But I would do stuff like that to basically show. Look, I don't want this. To be like it's Mike versus. I want you to just know where the data exist. And then go look. The stuff's out there on the web. I canned searches through the Hebrew Bible and put the PDFs up there. Anybody who's followed me for any amount of time knows that I'm big on directing people to primary sources. That usually kills the conversation.
Yes.
And that's why I do it, because I want. When a claim is made about a primary source, well, it would make sense to go look at the primary source to see, if this is up to snuff or not. But, your listeners should, if I'm new to them, I'm not Philip Klass here. I want, to believe in extraterrestrials. I think it would be just neat, the next best thing to sliced bread, that kind of thing. I'm a biblical scholar. I'm not offended in any way by the idea of extraterrestrial life. It doesn't upset any theological apple carts for me. It's fascinating stuff. And so I separate the serious stuff, what I think of as serious ufology, away from this rather cartoonish,
goofiness,
ancient aliens wackiness stuff. To me, they're different. They're different realms.
Which we'll get to that in a second. There, go ahead, Alan. Now,
quick question, Michael, or Doctor, whichever you want me to call you tonight.
Doctor? Mike is fine. I used to tell students they could call me Mike or Your Holiness, and it was usually Mike.
What's your opinion on the Pope just recently announcing that he believes the Big Bang Theory is actually accurate and true?
I think it's yesterday's news. Not yesterday's news, like a century ago's news. Within both Catholicism and Protestantism, there's very wide acceptance Big Bang theory, evolutionary theory. The issue, the theological issue for people, whether they're Christians or conservative Jews or Muslims or whatever, is the initial causation. In other words, we don't have a problem with evolution. We do have a problem if it's totally naturalistic. In other words,
right.
You leave God out of the equation.
When divine intervention is what you're is.
Well, I'll give you an example. When I was at Wisconsin in graduate school, the church I went to there was a campus church, and it was heavily dominated by people in the hard sciences. It was really rare to find a grad student or a professor in the humanities like me. I mean, we had the head of environmental studies was in our church. We had the head of the botany department. We had 2 research physicists who worked in the super collider. We had an entomologist. We had a geologist. I mean, it was just so dominated by the hard science people, and all of them were serious Christians, and they all believed in, they would either call it theistic evolution or evolutionary creationism or something like that, where God was the initial cause of the Big Bang, and after that it's like, well, duh. They just had no problem with it at all. And so since I've been around a lot of those kind of people, it's kind of silly when I hear that, this evolution is just going to crush theism. Like, really? I mean, you're so underinformed if you're thinking about that. It's kind of the equivalent of the fundamentalist who's never been exposed to Christian scholarship in this area that doesn't take like a literal 24-hour day view. It's just underexposure.
Now, this is insane, by the way, and I mentioned this earlier. I am an atheist, but I tend to agree with just about everything that Michael is saying, especially when it comes to the languages. Because we were talking about this earlier, Mike, off air, and there's certain truths that escape whether you believe in God or not. And the Hebrew language, the way that you talked about the mistakes that Zecharia was making, that right there is where the truth is, right?
Yeah. When it comes to Sitchin, I mean, not everybody's in this bucket, but when it comes to what Sitchin is doing, there are a few items, and I would say that the minority of the issues I have with Sitchin are about translation. The core ideas, right. It's worse than that. What I'm actually saying on the website, and some of these parts of the website I've talked about, like me searching for Anunnaki, is that his core ideas, such as the Anunnaki are from Nibiru, like Nibiru is their home port or home planet or whatever it is, and Nibiru is a planet beyond Pluto, and I mean, you will not find a single tablet that associates the Anunnaki and Nibiru. That's just one example. So it's not that we're quibbling about translation. I'm literally saying it doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist, right.
So, I mean, how easy would it be for someone to shoot off, to me in an email, the tablet number, the chapter and verse, so to speak, tablet number and line. Well, here's one that has, Nibiru beyond Pluto, or here's one that mentions the Anunnaki with Nibiru. How easy would that be to basically just make Mike go away?
Right.
If it existed. And so I'm saying, look, the core ideas just literally aren't there. And, when you get beyond that, it's like he's making mistakes with Hebrew grammar. Language is, like you said, language is what it is.
Now, and let me ask you, do you think this was a mistake, or do you think some of this was done on purpose? Because when we, moving forward out of Zecharia for a second, when I saw the Ancient Aliens Debunked video that you took part in also, when, these guys were like flat out lying.
Yeah, I it's hard for me to look at Sitchin as being that bad, that flawed in terms of character.
Well, I got to ask the question: how many of them? As Andrew was saying about watching Ancient Aliens Debunked, how many of these people do you think were actually outright lying, or just a little bit on the misinformed side, or just not educated well enough on the other perspectives of what they were looking at?
I think there is some out and out fabrication. I mean, there's obviously a spectrum, but what I think the real crime here is that we've got a cash cow here, and we're just not going to look at mistakes we might be making. I mean, we're not going to do objective research in preparation for an episode just to make. We're not going to fact check anything. We're going to just spout this idea, and we're going to put some object that doesn't have any inscription, and we're just going to call it this, and we're going to say it originated over here at this time. We're going to present this picture of this object that actually exists, and then we're going to take all these data points that sort of surround it or aren't even related, and we're just going to stitch them together, and we're going to have a narrative. Now that to me is deceptive. So I think there is a character element in here, but with Sitchin, I think in some cases he sort of latched on to an idea and just loved it, convinced himself of it. I don't think he studied any of these ancient languages. The mistakes are just too fundamental. And he was Jewish.
This is the point, though, because he doesn't have any documentation ever that proved that he was a scholar of any of this stuff, right? I know, and I've
looked around for it a lot, and I would think if it existed, somebody would have sent it to me and said, "Ha ha," That, yeah. I mean, it's not there. Now he was a journalist, and he was Jewish. I have to assume that he could read Hebrew, but here's the problem. I have 4 kids. Okay, all of them can sight read English. Okay, I don't know that many of them could do grammatical analysis of anything they read. That's an entirely disciplined system. Explain the grammar to me. Talk about the semantics. Talk about the syntax. Talk about the verb tenses. That's the kind of stuff that when you're in the field of ancient texts, this is what you have to do.
Right.
It's textual analysis. So that's a lot different than being able to read a language. And so I think part of what Sitchin does is in that category. I mean, I assume he could read. I don't know that for a fact, but I assume he could. But when it comes to making points of analysis, like when he says Elohim is a plural word and it always refers to plural gods and stuff like that.
Right.
That is just flat out wrong.
Right.
No, you're right. It is flat out wrong. I went to a yeshiva for a large portion of my early years. So, yeah, he definitely got that one wrong.
Mm-hmm. I don't know how to explain that. If you're a Hebrew speaker, you should know that, even if you can't do grammatical analysis, because it's your language, and you have to have things like subject-verb agreement. And if you're Jewish, you're going to be exposed to the Hebrew Bible at some point.
Absolutely.
I don't really know. Since I can't psychologize him, and I tried to avoid doing that. I tried to stick to the flaws in the work. I don't really know, but my gut tells me he's not as bad as what we're seeing today, even though people use his material.
Well, he inspired the people that are today, like him and Eric Van Daniken.
That's true. That's true, and a lot of people have run with it, and I think it's exponentially more the cash cow.
What do you think is worse, though, in the long run, him or Van Daniken, when it comes to making these things up?
I actually think Van Daniken is, because Van Daniken included that, I think, a fairly sinister racist element in his ancient astronaut theory. And I don't see Sitchin doing that. I mean, there are places where Sitchin even tries to sort of talk positively about the God of Israel and things like that. But Van Daniken, I mean, his personal history is very checkered. He's got this, the Africans in Egypt, that was just a flawed genetic experiment. I mean, he says things like this, and I don't see Sitchin doing that.
Yeah, I agree. Sitchin, he was a little bit more cookie cutter. One thing that I believe that really gave him a little bit more credibility with a lot of folks was when NASA entertained the idea of Planet X years ago, and he has a couple interviews that he actually went to NASA and they spoke about the possibility of being a 10th planet out there. I think that lent a lot of credibility to Sitchin.
Yeah, and it's a classic example of correlation not being causation.
Right, exactly.
Well, don't forget also that a lot of the other thing that NASA pointed out was a lot of the stars that we see out there are actually binary star systems.
Right.
And they've actually hypothesized that we are actually part of a binary system. The problem is that can't
find it. Yeah.
It's not that we can't find it. It's a brown dwarf, which really isn't something that's easy to find. So with a brown dwarf and maybe one or two planets orbiting that because of the gravity.
It's an interesting. The conversation here is interesting in that it shows how Sitchin was able, after a book or two, was able to sort of draw on catastrophism, the old Velikovskian models, for some of his things. So Sitchin is actually fairly eclectic as well in what he's. Where he's going, where he eventually went, I guess is the best way to say that, as other ideas accrued, to his initial work. But, I think, he, and it may have been his publisher. I mean, I wasn't reading him in 1978 when 12th Planet came out, but on his books, I don't know about the original.
I was 1 year old. I wasn't reading him either. So.
Yeah. But the books will make the claim that he's an ancient language scholar and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, I mean, you never saw that with von Daniken, and so it creates this air of credibility, to what's being said. And frankly, like I said, this isn't stuff that you do to get girls. I mean, how many people go into this stuff? I mean, these departments, reality check here. My department at the UW was small. Okay?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like people are fighting to get in to do Hebrew and Semitic studies.
Yeah, but you're going to get girls with the scary cat lady women.
Oh my!
Let's sorry.
Let's just not go there.
Okay. Well, hold on one second. Alejandro, you're still on, right? Alejandro, are you still there? Or?
He might have muted himself.
He might have muted himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did mute myself. I am here.
Okay, for all of us here who have been to UFO conferences and other conventions, would we all agree? And I'm not trying to stereotype or anything, folks.
Oh,
really,
of course, not.
Tell me, how many of the women that you do see there come off like that scary cat lady?
At the UFO Congress, the women are beautiful. They are gorgeous.
You know what they say on the internet? You know the famous quote on the internet: "Pics or it didn't happen." Show me
That's
pics
true.
or it didn't happen.
I do believe that chicks are into UFOs.
All right. There's a lot of cat ladies there.
I've seen some strange things. I'll just leave it at that. It's a distinct minority. It's a distinct minority.
We are a distinct minority.
Well, I know, but it's a minority within a minority.
I'm Cuban, so I'm definitely a minority. Now,
I don't know
Mike,
what the word is for that, but
Cuban. Yeah,
no, distinct minority within a minority.
A minority within a minority.
Yeah.
There should be a word for that.
Nerd. I don't know.
Micro minority.
There, you micro minority. Yeah, I like that. Now, speaking of minorities or people in general, did you go and get attacked by anybody after you started coming at Zecharia Sitchin? Like, did you find some of his big supporters or fans? Did they come at you at all at some of these lectures? I mean, did you find that there was any negative blowback from you coming out and pretty much tearing his entire theory apart?
Well, I've only had what I would call negative. I've only had one negative experience, and that was, I'm not going to name the conference because I don't want to, stigmatize it. But
every conference is a good conference.
Yeah,
correct. Another excellent answer. But I did go to a conference, and the person I think, well, I don't think it was obvious they didn't vet me, and so I gave them the titles when they asked me to speak. What I'm going to speak on, and one of them was Sitchin's material, and I went in there and basically just dismantled, but the people in the room were okay. I mean, I could tell they were disturbed, but they were okay. But the people who organized the conference refused to remunerate me as we had agreed, and basically told me I would never be back again. So.
I will tell you, Michael, it is like finding out that Santa Claus is not real. When I saw your work, I was like, my God, I've been lied to yet again. First Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, now Zecharia Sitchin. I cannot believe this is happening to me again. It is kind of like that feeling. I can imagine the people sitting there, the faces must have been like deers caught in headlights, huh?
Well, there was definitely some of that, and there was a small sort of pro-peanut gallery there, in the way back, close to the exit.
True or false? Were you wearing a bulletproof vest that night? True or false?
No, I was not. I was not. Again, just a little naive, but I mean, you go to. I like UFO conferences. No.
That's terrible.
Well, I given the context, I understood, and I wasn't going to complain about it, but it was what it was. But I've never had anything like that happen since. I mean, I don't do a lot of conferences. I mean, I tend to go where I'm invited, and now this year I'm going to go to the IUFO conference, or next year I should say, in February. But I'm not speaking there. I'm just going to go as an attendee. But usually if I go, it's because somebody's asked me to do something. I actually like UFO conferences. I tell, because I get the question on both sides. I refer to myself as the equal opportunity offender. I get it from the religious crowd too. The Christian crowd, like, what in the world are you doing? Why do you go to these events? Why do you do this goofy stuff? And both from academics and the normal people. And I tell them, look, I love to go to UFO conferences because people there, you can have a better discussion about spiritual things there than you can in church in most cases.
True. Is this where I say amen?
Yeah, you can say amen, yes. But and I say because they're used to thinking about big picture questions.
Right.
And they enjoy that. Who are we? How do we get here? What's my destiny? Do I have a purpose? All these major, they're all inherently theological, but
spiritual
they're
and
primed.
are two different things.
Yeah, they are, especially structurally, but they are primed, to get into these conversations, and I like going to them. It certainly doesn't trouble me. But I actually enjoy it.
You're the perfect person to ask this question. What are your feelings on this report? And actually, I teased about this earlier in the show, and I really wanted to touch base on it or talk about it. So I'm glad I remembered. But what are your feelings on Professor Brian Cox saying that alien life is all but impossible and humanity is unique?
Yeah, the rare earth, hypothesis.
Right.
I think, to be fair, we have to say that there are data that, again, if you're just looking at those data, that would suggest that. But I don't think it's fair to say that data has won the day. I think that's definitely premature. I would look at a statement like that and think of it the way I think of the Drake equation,
right,
which to me is pretty much useless. I know it has this sanctified status now, but I agree with Michael Crichton here, the late Michael Crichton, who basically said that the Drake equation is useless because here you have an equation where someone invented the components to the equation and assigned values to each component that are not the result of empirical analysis. In other words, it's a guess.
Right.
It's made up.
It's a theory.
It's a theory.
Right.
And so to look at the Drake equation and say, oh, this proves something, to me is sort of the other side of looking at the data that suggests, a really slim likelihood, of life elsewhere, at least as far as we can measure it or where we're measuring it. I think that's premature.
No, I agree. No, but wouldn't you agree also, Michael, that just about almost every scientific breakthrough has been really just theories that have gone over, like even Einstein's theory of relativity. It's a theory, we're pretty close to understanding the entire thing, but everything is theorized in science first. So why couldn't this be a theory that could be proven? Alien, life out there could be proven, even if it's microbial life. The thing is, would there be intelligent life? That's really the question. Intelligent life that knows how to think, how to reason, how to build ships, how to fly through space. Mm-hmm. That is the grand question. I think there is life teeming all over the cosmos, but intelligent life, that's the question, really.
It is, and that's really what everybody's angling for. But I think, and this might disturb people in the audience, or they might totally agree. I mean, who knows? But like in my novels, I get to explore a lot of these sorts of things, and there's a conspiratorial bent there. And in that material, I basically suggest fairly loudly in some places that it wouldn't matter. Because as soon as one microbe is discovered, people are already predisposed to connect that dot to a whole host of other ones.
Right.
And so if you were somebody sinister within the military-industrial complex, or some intelligent evil that's not human, or whatever spiritual view, I mean, if you're any of the bad guys, whatever gaps, whatever buckets they're in, you could very easily manipulate people with just one little data point like that, and you could create a herd, and you could direct that herd, to whatever other decisions, whatever other things you want them to think. So I think that shows that what everybody's really after, they want the intelligent life thing answered, and they're so ready for it. And I want this to be valid too. I mean, again, in my lifetime, I have a small list of things that, boy, I'd like to know if this is this or that, and this is on that list.
It really is one of the most important questions that mankind could possibly answer. Are we alone?
Yeah. So
not only are we alone, but are they intelligent like us? I mean, that's a heck of a question.
Yeah, and so I'm there wanting proof for this. And that's also the danger, because the more you want it, and the more you really assign sort of, like you use the term, kind of religious qualities to it, the human propensity is to evaluate the claims less,
right?
Because of the direction that you want it to go, and I think that's a danger. It's also why in today's conservative Christian world, the question of ET life is sort of viewed negatively, whereas even just a couple centuries ago, it was actually viewed very positively. And that's because in today's world, the discussion can't happen without marrying it to, and I don't think this is necessary at all, but it happens, without marrying it to naturalistic evolution. We found this microbe, therefore aliens exist, and they got here just like we did, there is no God, and all this kind of stuff. Well, those are all non sequiturs,
right?
But they're going to be the way that either certain people think or something is presented. And so people who are, religious and have a reasonably high view of the Bible get troubled by that. And that bothers me, because I don't see any of those things as necessarily connected.
Would you say that there's any indication at all in any of the religious works, Bible or the Torah or anything, that could indicate any alien intervention whatsoever?
Well, in intervention, I don't see that, but alien
or at least interaction or presence, right?
Presence or existence. Existence is the big umbrella one here. There are actually places that, let's say that. I mean, I'm not the guy.
There's
teaching.
A stack of Old Testament references.
Yeah. Well, my go-to place would actually be New Testament. There are a couple places in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews in chapter 11. There's one in Hebrews chapter 1 that talks about God making the world and things like that. If you actually look in the Greek text, that the term translated world in those verse references is actually plural. Now, grammatically and semantically, there's a way to look at that and not conclude that more than one is meant. It's a language issue, but you can certainly look at that and say that more than one is meant. I mean, you can get that from those passages. And so if tomorrow, ET lands on the White House lawn and say, hey, we aren't alone and all that sort of thing, it's like, it's very easy theologically to say, well, I guess the plural form of the word there was meant to tell us, meant to inform us, even though our minds didn't go there initially, was meant to tell us that, yeah, there are other worlds.
Right.
That's easy to do. But again, this isn't any profundity on my part. I mean, this material was discussed back in the 19th century, by people of whether they were Catholic or Protestant, and of course, you have your peripheral groups, you have your Gnostics and your Theosophists. They're all interacting with ancient texts, and they're talking about passages like that in a positive way with respect to other worlds. That was common. If you had a Christian audience, I could give you names like Timothy Dwight, who was the president of Yale, very famous Protestant, theologian. Chalmers, very famous Presbyterian preacher. I mean, they talk publicly about there being other worlds and that this was a good thing, and of course there are, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, you just don't see that today because we're on the other side of not only Darwin, but we're on the other side of people who use Darwin as a wedge against faith. Again, none of these things are necessarily connected, but they are used and abused in certain contexts and in certain discussions, and it has really soured the disposition of a lot of Jews and Christians against the whole idea. Muslims, I think, have a little less of a problem with it. There you could argue for intervention. Yeah. By the way, in the Quran, I mean, you could argue that you don't have as much leeway for extraterrestrial intervention in the course of human life and history. You do have it again. There's a little bit of a crack, door crack open there in the Quran. Not so much in the Christian Bible or the Hebrew Bible for Jews. But still,
what do you make of the Nephilim, though?
Oh, the Nephilim again. I don't know. To this day, I don't know where Sitchin got his "people of the fiery rockets" thing. I mean, that's just nutty. I mean,
he was reading the subtitles.
I don't know what he was. He wasn't doing any Hebrew work. I can tell you that.
Absolutely not.
The Nephilim are in Genesis 6 are cast as, again, in a literal. Let's put it this way: in one of two possible literal readings, cast as the offspring of the sons of God, which is a phrase that is used elsewhere in the Hebrew Bible for divine beings, and so you have this
here's
divine
the funny
human cohabitation.
Sons of God, but it's not the same analogy as angels. So is this another offshoot or another species?
See, you're correct in that, because you'll never see the word, you'll never see ma'ach, angel, in the same passage or tied to the other phrase, sons of God.
Exactly.
You don't have a textual overlap there. My own view is that your base term Elohim is not, contrary to what most Judeo-Christian thinkers and preachers are wont to believe, really a position they've inherited historically. It's not about a unique set of attributes. I mean, we as English speakers, we say the word, we pronounce God, God, and we think of a specific set of attributes because that's what we're taught. And there's only one of those, because if there wasn't only one, then you can't have a unique set of attributes. Well, the problem is that the biblical writers use Elohim of 5 different things other than the God of Israel. And so it can't refer, by definition, it can't refer to a specific set of attributes. What Elohim really is it denotes sort of its realm distinction. It denotes your place of address, the realm you belong to. In other words, if you're an Elohim, you are, by definition, not human, not part of the natural terrestrial world. You're in the, quote, spiritual realm. You're a disembodied spiritual being, which is why Elohim can be used of like the disembodied dead in 1 Samuel 28:13. They had their own logic for it that we don't have. Well, that's the base term. You're one of those guys. You live over there. You're from that realm.
Now, is there a possibility?
Sons of God is a hierarchical term.
Sorry, Michael, let's cut you off. But real quickly on the Elohim, could that have not been a mistranslation of what aliens could be, and maybe they just thought they were?
Well, if you were an ancient person, you
would have no reference what an alien is.
Right. You'd have no frame of reference, and so you could conclude that. But what I would expect of the ancient people writing the texts would be some indication that there's only one Elohim that is uncreated in Hebrew thinking and biblical thinking. Pardon me. And that is, the God of Israel. The other Elohim, by definition, are created beings. They're made of something, because you can only have one uncreated being.
Right.
So what I would expect is a little more commentary on they came from XYZ place, maybe a specific star, or they came in a craft. It's one of the oddest things in ancient material, the Bible, for example. You never have these beings sort of coming, in craft and leaving, and they don't require this. They just sort of show up.
Right.
And so that's something that if we were dealing with a biological entity, that I would expect to see and don't. So on the one hand,
well, none of they have transporters like on Star Trek.
Right.
Beam me down, Scotty. You don't need to see the ship.
On the one hand, I think, an ancient person would have thought that way, but I would think they would have said more about. I mean, they talk a lot about their God and other gods and all this stuff all the time, and so do other ancient texts. I think we just get a sort of a better picture, or at least the picture that we're prone to expect with the need to travel and all these other properties of a biological entity. You don't really get that. You don't really get they need the gods need to perpetuate their species. They need hydration. They need nutrition. I mean, they can do certain physical things, but you never get like this. You never get the idea again. And maybe it's just our modern mind that if we're dealing with a biological entity, there are a set of things that must be true according to science as we know it. So there's a bit of a scientific and a pre-scientific disconnect there. But the picture that I would think an ancient person is capable of expressing those things, and you just don't get that, which is again sort of odd. It's a disconnect.
It really is. Lou is still hanging on with us. I know Lou had a very important question he wanted to ask you. Lou, you're on still with us. Ask Dr. Heiser here your question.
Thank you. First, I just want to say to, I guess, you, Gackle, and Alan, and to Eugene, you have to get this guy on for more than just 1 hour.
Oh, no kidding.
I don't think 2 hours does him justice. Well, the quick question is, could Dr. Heiser take some of the money that Angel is paying him tonight and
No. That's the only way I can get a quality guest like Dr. Heiser. Really, I unloaded the Brinks trucks in front of this man's house, and thank you for being here.
Could he take some of that money and have
it's all Monopoly money, by the way, but go ahead.
Ms. Chasky run an analysis of Moore's handwriting or writing style, as we were discussing in the previous hour with Alejandro, and to see if Moore actually did compose the most significant MJ12 documents. And I'll just want to mention that years ago I heard Dr. Heiser talk about Brad Sparks and Barry Greenwood's report in the 2007 MUFON, and I know that that's underlying Alejandro's work. So I just wanted to thank him for letting me know about that years ago. So that was my primary question. And if not, assuming you can't afford to do it quickly, who do you suspect actually did write them, if there is one or just a few people? So thank you for your time.
Well, I am the last question is a little shorter. I mean, I am dependent on the work of people like Alejandro and others who, again, have followed the breadcrumb trail back to a few characters that, again, have confessed to certain things and therefore look like really good candidates, for some of this other. I don't know if your listeners know a little bit about the history of what I had done with the Majestic documents, but I knew of someone. Her name is Carol Chasky. She's a Ph.D. Forensic linguist, and her doctoral project was writing a computer program to test something that she would refer to, and others would refer to in the field of computational linguistics as authorship attribution. And that is if you have a document, or you actually need more than one, but it depends what you want to do. But if you have documents that are authored by a known person, her software program that she wrote, and she does this for a living. She's one of the, she's an expert witness in all sorts of court cases, and did so and so author this document, or did they not, and things like that. So she has a long track record of having her work validated in court. The idea being that if you take the known and you put it, into her software program, it will look for patterns. It will detect patterns, and not in vocabulary, not in the words, the verbs and the nouns and the things that you could fake if you wanted to fake a document. I'm going to talk about this particular thing. It's in things like your conjunctions, your prepositions, even your punctuation, if you wanted to go down that far, that you would have to spend most of your life analyzing someone's work to be able to fake that. So you take the knowns and you get these patterns, and then you take documents that claim a particular authorship. In the case of the Majestic documents, there are certain documents that have an author attached to them. And then you run that material, that text, and then you see if there are matches. Okay? So what I asked her to do was, again, I a bunch of these, I don't know, it was 8 or 9 different authors, and we had known examples from Hillenkotter or Truman or whoever it was, and then we ran them against the unknowns, and the Majestic documents did very poorly in the results of that test. Now, what I wanted to do is akin to what the caller just asked. After I gave this report away for free, and I spoke in Roswell on it at one conference. The idea was, look, Carol said, because I paid her, I don't know, it was like $1,800, $2,000. I mean, it was basically everything I had at the time, but I figured, somebody needs to do this. And, and she deserves to get paid for her work. So I said, well, how much would it cost to do a fuller set of tests and look for this and look for that? And she gave me a number, and it was like $5,000. So I went on Coast to Coast and said, look, here's the research. If you want this done, we set up a donation thing, to raise money for this. I'm not kidding. I got $20.
Wow.
Wow.
$20 that I returned. Obviously, I'm not going to keep $20.
That's insulting, actually. Yeah.
I got $20. Well, what it taught me was that people really don't, I hate to say it, a lot of people just don't want the truth.
Yeah, that's true.
It just hurts, and so, but I will tell the questioner, the caller, Lou, that the idea to match against Moore or Doty or people like this, that isn't actually part of what I asked her to do. So maybe I could go back to her and say, are you still interested? I mean, it's been 7 years, since we did this. I don't know if she's still interested or not. But that would be a really intriguing thing to do. I mean, I could ask her if she's still interested, and we could try it again. I mean, now that was the date we didn't have Kickstarter. Might be a good thing to do with Kickstarter, because I give the money to Carol and let her go to town on things, and it's an intriguing possibility. There were other things I wanted her to do, because she could do 2 or 3 other layers of testing to really, get very granular results on certain things. And that's what I was thinking of. I wasn't thinking of a candidate. But your caller is right. We got some good candidates now. It might be worth investigating that and asking her.
Well, this is dark matter radio as well, so there's a lot of hosts that could plumb for your Kickstarter, including Art Bell when he comes back to the radio.
That's true. It is a different world than it was 7 years ago. The internet, is considerably larger and more sophisticated. And
united us all. United us all. It really has.
Right.
It is a global uniter, the internet.
In many ways, it is. In many ways, it is.
I would encourage you to do that.
It's a good idea. Yeah, it is a good idea.
Well, that was my fundamental question. So thanks for your time. And again, I want to thank you for all the information you're putting out. I know free. I think I bought some documents from you years ago, but I certainly appreciate it. I'm familiar with your website. So,
well, thanks. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. Thanks for calling in, Lou. Thanks for calling in again, by the way.
Talk to you. Bye.
That's a great Lou. Great caller.
Yeah.
Guys, we're almost out of time. Michael, we have to have you back on the show here. This has been so much fun. The hour's just flown by. Like I said, you're the type of guest that you want to have on for 3-4 hours. I know I wouldn't want to actually do that to you because you're a busy man. I know you're busy schedule, but we have to have you back on soon to continue this conversation because it's just been phenomenal having you on. Thank you so much for being on here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it was great definitely having you in here.
Now, let's give out the websites real quick again, so anybody listening in, they can go ahead and check out everything that you've worked on, SitchinIsWrong.com. What
Sure.
are the websites?
Well, the main website to go to is DR, as in doctor, DRMSH. Those are my initials. So drmsh.com. If you go to that page, you'll see links right up front to everything else I do. Including Sitchin. Sitchin would be listed under my Paleobabble link. Paleobabble is a blog that I run about weird things that people believe about the ancient world. And UFO religions, that's another blog. Naked Bible is for biblical study. So I do 3 blogs. I would suggest, though, that when they go up to drmsh.com, put in /links and then -2. And there are all sorts of links that gather all kinds of ancient astronaut sort of things and MJ12 research links that I think people would find really, really useful.
Very, very cool. Once again, thank you so much for being on here. And guys, we're all out of time here on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Unfortunately, we have to sign off for the evening or the morning or whatever. We will be back next week with another great show. By the way, please check out that Kickstarter account from Dan Martin. The food, organic, free food stuff, that's great stuff there. So please check them out. And yeah, Michael, definitely look into Kickstarter. Or one of these things.
I will. It's a really good idea. It's just something that 7 years ago I didn't consider, and it's just a good idea.
It's amazing how technology is just giving us all these outlets to do these things. But it's great work. Dr. Heiser, keep up the great work, my friend. Keep up what you're doing, and we definitely want to have you back on here. Guys, we're signing off for the evening. This is Skywatchers Radio. Thank you for listening.